Okay, for this tutorial, I'm going to talk about the different brush settings that we can get with Grease Pencil. So by default, we've got our radius at 20 pixels, we've got the strength at 0.6, and we've got material color turned on. Now in another tutorial, I talked about how to add materials or how to change from material color to vertex color so that we can just draw with whatever color we want. But let's go over some of these other settings. So radius is fairly straightforward. That just makes the brush bigger or smaller. And this button is whether you want it to be an even stroke the whole way through or whether you want it to rely on your pen pressure to tell it what to do. So if I turn that off, we can see now it's the same thickness the whole way through. But the strength is still relying on the pen pressure. And that's how transparent it is. So full strength would be fully opaque. You can't see through it at all. And if I turn that off, now we can see it's just a solid line. It's not doing anything based on our pen pressure, and it's not getting bigger or smaller. But now let's look at some of these other settings. So the stroke settings, we can tell it to smooth our stroke. So if I jitter it a lot, or even if I'm drawing with a mouse, that can make it a little bit more of a smooth curve. And we can also randomize our stroke. So if I randomize the radius a little bit, then that's kind of hard to see, but you see how it's getting a little bit blotchy instead of staying the same thickness the whole way? So that can be really good if you want a hand-drawn look. So if you want it to look like you're using a pencil and paper rather than doing it digitally. We can randomize all kinds of different things, including if we randomize the color, you can see that gives us a little bit of variety there. Yeah, and we can jitter it, which just means it kind of adds a little bit of noise to our stroke. So then if we, here I'll turn off the random hue and random radius. But if we let it jitter like that, you can see it gives us kind of a funky looking squiggle line. If we turn that down, we can get a more subtle effect. So then let's take a look. I'm going to turn the jitter off and the random radius. So if we go to the advanced settings, we can see the hardness of the brush. Let me make that a little bit bigger so we can see it better. So that makes it, instead of being the same all the way out to the edges, it gives it kind of a cloudy appearance, almost like it's been blurred. So that's turning the hardness down. And if we turn the samples down, that's just going to make it read our movements more or less often. So if we turn the samples down, that actually makes it more precise. But if we turn the samples up, you can see how it's a little bit shakier looking. All right, and then the last thing I want to do is to talk about different brushes. So we've got all of these settings that we can change, but we also have different presets we can use. So there's a setting for a blotchy ink pen. If I change that color to black, you can see how that's almost like you're writing with a pen that's leaking a little bit, like a gel pen or something. And then we've got a chisel marker, so like writing with a whiteboard marker or something like that. A couple different pencils. And we can also download a whole bunch of different textured brushes. And I can show you where to find more if you want. So that gave us a whole bunch more options. So now I've got a brush that's kind of cloudy like that, and this brush that's meant to look like you're painting with oil paints. So if I change the color on that Now, most often in animation, we're going to want something that stays consistent from frame to frame. So turning the strength all the way up, keeping the pen pressure off for the strength, having it on for the radius is sometimes fine, but you just want to make sure that you have something that you can replicate. So if I go over to here, it's much easier to make it look like just another version of the same thing if I keep all of the settings fairly simple. But if you're looking for a particular artistic effect or don't mind so much if it flickers from frame to frame, then you can get some pretty cool visuals by trying out those different settings.